Hey guys, Will here with CreateStudio, and in this video I'm going to show you how to create a really cool interactive scene inside of CreateStudio 3.0. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in and take a look at what you're going to be creating.
Modern learning technologies. We use cutting-edge methodologies and platforms for maximum learning efficiency.
All right, so let's go ahead and delete all of this and let's get started from scratch here. All right, so the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring in my background, right? So I'm going to come over here to my backgrounds here, and what I can do is let's go ahead and search up whiteboard. All right, I get a whole bunch of whiteboards here, and I'm going to go ahead and choose this whiteboard here. And remember, if you haven't downloaded it already, just go ahead and click on the little download icon and it will download into your system, and then you can drag that into your timeline or the canvas. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this right here. All right, so I've got my background in, looking pretty sweet. All right, next up, I need to add some text. All right, so I'm gonna go over here and click on the plus icon here in the top of my interface and then select text. All right, and I'm gonna go ahead and just drag this to about right here. So for now, I'll realign these in a second. Now what I do wanna do is I wanna go ahead and type in modern learning technologies, right? So let's go ahead and get that typed in, modern learning technologies. All right. So what I want to do now is let's go ahead and adjust the fonts, right? So let's go ahead and make the font. I'm going to go ahead and make sure this is selected, come over here to my settings, and then I'm going to go ahead and search up, let's go ahead and search up inner here. And then I'm going to go ahead and make my weight, let's make it bold. And then let's make sure that my color, I'm going to go ahead and choose this purple color here. I've already saved to my favorites, but you can use a color wheel, pick any color you choose. That option is there for you. All right, so now that I've got the color selected, I could adjust the scale a little bit. So I think I'm gonna make my scale, let's go ahead and make it about 48. And then I think I'm gonna change my spacing to, instead of -20, let's make it -40. All right, so that's where I'm gonna start so far, right? Now I do wanna animate this a little bit because I'm gonna add some motion to it. So let's go ahead and go to motion right here. Let's start off with this, and let's go down to saved, and let's click on bottom fade, right? And then I'm gonna change this to word, and then we'll leave it forward, and our offset, let's go ahead and make that about 70, all right? And so now you can see when it plays, it has this nice little bottom fade animation that kind of brings it in. So far so good. Now we are gonna add some keyframe animations to this because I wanna create a little bit more movement, right? So what I can do is I'm going to move my cursor to about right here after the bottom fade there, and then I can select my modern technologies text there, and then on the keyboard I could hit P, and that's gonna open up my animation properties for me, right? And I'm just gonna adjust the position, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and select it there and select my first keyframe, right? So let's go ahead and make sure this is selected. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and center this text on the screen here so it looks like it's centered, right? So it's probably about right here, is looking pretty good right there. All right, and now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select my second keyframe, all right? And now this is where I wanted to make some movement, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and drag it up to about right here. All right, because I'm gonna have some other scene text that's gonna appear underneath it in a minute here, but this is where I want it to end up, right? So remember, the farther apart your keyframes, the longer your animation time is. The shorter they are together, the faster that speed happens, right? So if I play this back as is, let's see, goes up as nice. So that's about a good speed. Now I could speed it up or I could make it a little slower. So that's just dependent on your preference, but I think that works pretty well. All right, so next up, I'm gonna go ahead and trim this down, and then let's go ahead and actually adjust these so that we're sitting at about, I don't know, 11, 10 seconds or so, right? So we're gonna go ahead and pull this out here. All right, so we've got our image set up, our background, and we've got our text laid out, right? So next step we're gonna need is I'm gonna add some of that animation text that's gonna go underneath that, right? So I'm gonna go into my scenes here, and I've got a already saved out scene with some animations already built in. And again, this is totally customizable to whatever it is that you're creating, right? You can add your own animations, your own stat points, whatever it is that you're trying to create. It's all totally doable right here in CreateStudio 3.0. All right, so what I can do is I've got my box stuff, and inside of here you can see that it's already a scene built out, and I've got all these interactive text going on with some animations in different groups, right? So I'm gonna go back to the timeline and get this going. All right, so next up, I wanna go ahead and move this up a little bit just so it's a little more aligned with my text at the top there, right? With my modern learning technologies. And then if I play this back, I'll have a nicely little animated sequence there with my text that I created up on top, right? So looking pretty good so far. Now I do want to take this, and I'm just going to maximize this to the length of the rest of the stuff here. All right, so now we are ready to bring in our character, right? So I'm going to go ahead and go back over here to our studio section. Let's go ahead and go back here. And if I go to our 3D characters, I'm going to go ahead and bring in Tom, right? So I'm going to go ahead and drop him in the timeline. And now let's go over here and let me move over him so you can see what he looks like. And let's go ahead and use the customize tool here, and let's adjust some of his clothing, change his shoes, change his appearance a little bit, because it's a really cool feature inside of CreateStudio 3.0, right? So I'm gonna go to the top here, and let's give him a t-shirt, and let's go to the pants, and let's do these pants right here. And then you know what? Let's go ahead and change the color though. So I'm gonna scroll down on the customizable colors here, and you'll see I can change skin, his top, bottoms, his shoes. So what I'm gonna do is let's go with this bottoms here. They're this green, and I want them to be this more gray color. Maybe gray black, something about right there. All right, and then let's adjust his shoes. Actually, let's change it to a different pair of shoes, right? So let's give him some tennis shoes. And then now let's go back down to our colors, and let's make these black. All right, so he looks pretty stylish there. And now let's go ahead and let's give him a different haircut here. Let's do medium hair, and then let's give him some facial hair. Let's go ahead and give him the square beard. What's that look like? Or how about the side shave? That looks pretty good. All right, and let's give him some glasses. Let's give him some business glasses. All right, so he's looking pretty good, doing pretty good so far. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to change his idle animation, and let's go ahead and turn it into a walking animation. All right, because what he's going to end up doing is he's going to end up walking off screen across the floor here and ending up right here in this location. All right, so the first thing I want to do to make this happen is I need to press P, or select my walking animation here, press P on the keyboard, and then I'm going to select scale and character view, right? Because I'm going to adjust the position. He's going to kind of be a little smaller when he comes out from the corner here, and he'll get a little bit bigger as he scales up to kind of keep that relevance in check, right? And then we're going to adjust his character view, which allows us to rotate him in different directions so we can point him in the way that he's going to be walking. All right, so let's go ahead and select our first keyframe here. And then let's go ahead and select rotate. And then when rotate is selected, you can then left click with your mouse and drag to the left or to the right. You can even go upside down, forwards and back. But we want to point him in a direction where he's going to be walking from the corner of the screen here, right? So that's a good spot for him to be. And we're going to deselect rotate there so we can then get control to move Tom around again, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull him off screen. And actually, before I pull him completely off, I'm going to go ahead and scroll down here, and I'm going to go to my properties, and I'm going to change my scale from 150, and let's go ahead and make it 260. All right. So I do that because he's close to the camera, so we want to keep that perspective in mind, right? All right, so I'm going to start him here, and let's go ahead and get him to about right there off screen. All right. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and select my second keyframe, and we do want him to finish walking, and I do want him to finish about right here, but I'm going to adjust that scale again. So I'm going to come over here to properties, and let's go ahead and make that, that's pretty close. Let's go a little bigger than 150, 153. All right. So now he'll walk and then he'll turn around, right? All right. So now I want to add a couple of more animations. Let's go ahead and add new animation, and let's go ahead and find the pointing right animation. And then let's add one more action, and let's look for the thumbs up. And then our last animation is going to be our idle. All right, so let's go back up and find the idle. There we go. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and take this whole clip here, and I'm just gonna move it to the 0 line, so that way it starts right at the beginning. He's gonna start walking, and then he'll turn around, and then he's gonna point, and then he'll give a thumbs up, and then he idles out. Right, so that's the sequence of animations that we're looking for, right? Okay, so before I continue on, there's a couple things I want to do. I want to scroll down here, and I want to add a blur effect to my image. All right, so I want it to kind of start off with the blur effect, and then it'll kind of open up softly, right? So let's go ahead and come to our effects and components here. And then what I can do is scroll down and find the blur effect and just drag that onto my canvas there. Now it doesn't add the blur effect until I turn it on to the line item that I'm looking for, right? So I want it to be added to the image, so make sure it's selected. Come over here to my effects, and the blur effect is on, but I need to turn it on the in animation. And I'm gonna go ahead and do like a reverse type of blur. And then let's go ahead and change the strength. Let's make that 6. All right. So now when it plays, it'll have this little soft opening blur, right? Okay. Next thing I want to do is I'm going to do some fine tuning of the box itself, right? So when I added my little interactive UI inside of there, it needs to be tweaked a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and let's zoom in a little bit here, and let's kind of drag this here. Let's just minimize this a little more so it's inside of our canvas there. Center it up, and then should be pretty good. All right, so that looks a lot better. So now we're ready to add some cameras, right? So let's go over here to our components, and let's open up and find the camera here, and let's drag that onto our canvas. Now what that does is it adds a camera track to our timeline, which we can then right click on and then hit add animation. All right, so I'm gonna pull my cursor to the front side of this camera, and I'm gonna drag my camera over just a little bit so it starts a little sooner. And then I'm gonna go ahead and set the start point for this camera, like what I want it to be, a medium shot, a wide shot, a close up. So we're gonna go ahead and drag in our camera box here so that it starts off as about a medium shot. All right, so we'll get about right here. And we're gonna go ahead and angle this shot so it kind of has this little angled tilt to it, which is kind of cool. And then we'll set it right here. And remember, if your camera goes outside and you see the red there, that just means that your camera has gone outside the canvas and you need to bring it back in so it'll work properly there. All right, so let's go ahead and set that there. And let's drag our cursor to the other side of that camera and set an out point for that. And then we're gonna go ahead and resize this camera. And let's go ahead and bring it down here and set that medium shot right about here. And then we're gonna go ahead and give it a tilt back this way. All right, so looking pretty good. And if you, with that camera selected, you can drag your cursor and you can see how it's tracking Tom and how that's gonna look, right? So now if I press play here, you'll see that we get this nice little cool tilt with our camera pan at the same time, which is really awesome. All right, so now let's add one more camera, and we're gonna close out this with the wide shot, and it's gonna also tilt out as it goes back into that wide shot. So let's go ahead, right click again on your camera track, add animation. Let's go ahead and drag this camera. Let's see, we probably want it about right. That's probably pretty good actually. All right, drag your cursor before with that camera selected there, and we're gonna leave that frame alone, right? That camera is still in a medium shot, but we're gonna come to the end here, drag our cursor to the end of that, and then what we're gonna do is expand camera over here on the right side. And so now it'll then have a nice little angled back out into a full shot, which is really cool. All right, so now I'm gonna add some speech to this. So I'm gonna go over here and go to my media, and I'm gonna go, and I've got some already recorded dialogue that I'm gonna drag into my timeline here. And what I wanna do is, I'm gonna go find a spot where I want Tom to start talking at, right? So I'm gonna say he's already walked in, he turns around. Right as he's about to turn, I'm gonna have him start firing off some dialogue, right? So I'm kind of lined it up in a pretty good spot already. And I wanna sync this dialogue so that Tom's mouth moves while the dialogue is going on, right? Such a super cool feature inside CreateStudio 3.0, right? So what I can do is I can right click on my dialogue here and then go up and select sync with Tom. Now, before I do that, I want to take a note that if your dialogue is outside of the animation lines, it will not sync with your character. So you need to make sure that it's over the animation that you're working with, right? So I'll put this back about right here, and then I'll right click it and I will say sync with Tom. So now when I play this back,
Modern learning technologies. We use cutting-edge methodologies and platforms for maximum learning efficiency.
So that's a really cool feature inside of CreateStudio 3.0 to be able to make the characters' mouths move with what you're actually inputting in for your dialogue, right? So super awesome. All right, so one thing I do want to say is that all access users do get this scene already pre-built out for them. So if I come over here and I go into my scenes here, I can scroll down under the online education scene. You'll see that you get a whole bunch of scenes, but there is the learning models there already pre-built for you. So that is one thing to note if you're an all access user. All right, so that is how you can create some really cool interactive scenes inside of CreateStudio 3.0. Hopefully you got some really cool quick tips out of here. Can't wait to see what y'all create, and I'll catch y'all in the next tutorial.